The age of transition, a step towards a romantic movement in the literature. Romanticism. Romanticism is basically a movement when we can see lots of literary reactions and lots of romantic reaction in the literary work of this period. It was called the Age of Transition because the drift of poetry of this period was toward the Romanticism, and it was a romantic reaction, a rebellion against the classical dominations. So basically, we have some questions like objective type questions which have been repeated in your exams again and again, and these are the most important questions um, we have to understand. The age of Johnson is also called the age of transition in the English literature. So, the age of Johnson is also related to the age of transition, the age of Romanticism. The greatest protagonist of the classicism during the latter half of the 18th century was Dr. Samuel Johnson. The greatest protagonist of the classicism during the latter half of the 18th century was a Dr. Samuel Johnson, who supported Dr. Johnson in the field of poetry Goldsmith. Johnson's poem was and were London and the Vanity of Human Wishes. Pop was the limit of the classical literature. Who said this about the pop? Gold, Goldsmith. So these are the most important questions. So uh, London, who supported Dr. Johnson in the field of poetry? Goldsmith. Johnson's poems was and were London and the Vanity of Human Wishes. Pop was the limit of classic literature. Who said this about Pop? Goldsmith. The poems of Goldsmith were The Travellers and The Deserted Village. What was the main characteristics of the classical poetry? Product of intelligence, deficient, deficient in emotions and imagination, town poetry, no love for nature, style was formal and artificial, written in the closed couplet, didactic. So these are the most important points, which are the characteristic of the classical poetry. Product of intelligence, deficient, deficient in emotions and imagination, town poetry, no love for nature, style was formal and artificial, written in closed couplet, didactic. So the chief characteristic of the new poetry and romanticism were encouraged emotions, passion and imaginations, love for nature, revived romantic spirit, opposed artificial and formal style, encouraged metrical experiment and the poetry liberty. So these are the most important point in whom poetry the main romanticism characteristic is his minute observation of nature. J. James Thomas. Poem The Season is written by the James Thomas. So these are the most important questions. Here I am going to recall them in order to make you understand in a very well manner. So basically, a romanticism is a period of the age of transition, the age of Johnson's Johnson's time, yeah, Johnson's birth. So it was a reaction in the literary works of this period. Like we can see that all the literary works uh, created by the writers and produced by the writers or are belonging from the romantic romanticism and the romanticism reactions. And basically it was called the age of transition because the drift of poetry of this period was towards the romanticism, and it was a romantic reaction and a rebellion against the classical domain. So here we have some question. The age of Johnson is also called the age of romanticism, the age of transition in the English literature. The greatest protagonist of the classicism during the latter half of the 18th century was the Dr. Samuel Johnson, who supported Dr. Johnson in the field of poetry. Goldsmith. Johnson's poems were London and the Vanity of Human Wishes. Pope was the limit of classical literature. Who said these about Pope? Mm, Goldsmith. The poem of Goldsmith were The Traveller and the Desert Village. What was the main characteristic of the classical poetry? Product of intelligence, definitions and emotions and imagination towards poetry and no love for nature. Style was formal and artificial, written in the closest couplet and dialectic. The chief characteristics of the new poetry romanticism were encouraged emotions, passions and imaginations, love for nature, revived romantic spirit, opposite artificial and formal style, encouraged metrical experiment and the poetry liberty. So these are the main characteristics of the romanticism, in whom poetry the main romantic character. In his minute observation of nature, James Thomas. The poem The Season is written by James Thomas. So I hope you like this video, which is very important according to examination point of views.